we're talking about digital mental health and what that looks like. What are some of the benefits of digital mental health when we think about patients, clinicians, providers, and also systems of care?
Yeah, so from a systems of care perspective, what we've observed and been able to publish on are a couple of things. So one is in terms of addressing some of the systemic barriers to accessing care, like transportation, childcare, flexible work hours, we've absolutely seen that taking traditional care and making it virtual has helped to overcome some of those barriers. We saw our no-show rate plummet, in particular among our Medicaid patients. Um, and so a significant increase in our ability to reach folks because they didn't have to come into the office. And then the second thing that we've seen is an ability to address, at this point, sort of mild and moderate challenges with some of these wellness technologies, and the ability to basically give somebody something the day that they let us know that they need something. And that has been a pretty profound change and a really exciting one. Um, and so, the ability to get somebody something really quickly, I think is a really important trend in how we're going to be addressing, in particular, I think mild and moderate mental health.
Um, I'll jump in to add there some of the benefits. I'm a director of clinical excellence at Grow Therapy, and we deliver virtual care across all 50 states. So my scope and all of my past experiences have been in care delivery, specifically telehealth. And one of the things, of course, we talk a lot about access, and that's a benefit, right? People can get appointments in sooner periods of time. I spent about 10 years in the health system with massive wait lists of trying to figure out what do we do with patients. And that's not so much our problem anymore. In fact, now we're starting to look at, now we have access, but now we need to go really drive towards clinical quality and focus on that. But beyond access of just getting an appointment, one of the benefits I've seen is being able to match clients and therapists more effectively. Again, in the health system, maybe we had 100 clinicians and we just had to find what patient we could, in a best fit line, match with a provider. But now we have thousands in our network. So when we can get a lot more precision in matching patients to providers, and I think that brings access to like a whole new level. And we see a second visit retention rates of like upwards of 80 and better. And we know if, patients can not only get into care quickly, but attend more than one visit, we have more of a chance for success.
I'm Elizabeth Morray. I'm VP of Clinical for Alma. And I'll jump in here and talk a little bit about some of the potential benefits for providers of having access to these digital tools to use with their clients. And I think really when I think about it, the opportunity is that these tools allow traditional talk therapists to really enhance and extend the care that they're already providing. Whether they're using a VR tool like Think to provide ADHD kind of gamified treatment, or wearables that provide deeper insight into client functioning between sessions. To access to kind of curated content to be delivered to clients between sessions, there's some really exciting opportunities for clinicians to strengthen the work that they're already doing. One of the tools that comes to mind for me is one called PsychFlex, developed by the founder of Acceptance and Commitment Therapy, where using this tool, therapists can actually create intervention kernels in their own voice from their own modality, and then using data that they're collecting from clients between sessions, deliver appropriate intervention kernels at the right point in time to help, again, extend therapy beyond the hour a week, four walls of therapy context. And what I often say is that, for those of us who practiced CBT for insomnia, it's one thing to help your clients with sleep hygiene at 2 o'clock in the afternoon when they're in their office with you. Another thing to give them access to tools that might actually give them those skills at 11:30 p.m. when they're struggling to fall asleep. So I think there's some really exciting opportunity to augment the high quality work that's already being done.
Just in terms of effectiveness, really quickly, I'll say that, what we're starting to see a bunch more research coming out on effectiveness. Largely it's around trials, but we just published our first effectiveness paper on real world clinical deployment of some of these sort of digital apps, digital tools. And the effectiveness is quite good. I want to be clear that that's with, deliberately chosen mild and moderate patients. I think you're going to get a link to the paper. It's open access. But the overall promise of the right tools, I think, is really significant. And I don't think we've even started to sort of tap the potential for these things to augment or to replace some of the work that we do as clinicians.
I will also add to that really quickly because I think everyone here is talking about access. I do think one of the benefits that almost was, a byproduct benefit is that we've also been able to really scale up prevention and stepped care in a way that we could not do before. Because people are building a lot of intervention, but they're also very quickly learning that in healthcare, there's a reason why we were struggling with intervention because we don't have a lot of people. And so on a massive scale, people are thinking about what else can we add as an augmentation or that something as an adjunct. And I think that's really helpful for normalizing for people that therapy is not the only way to improve your mental health, is being able to have a lot of services that are either prescribed or an app that you can download or even something that your provider can send to you, or having a coach learning how to sleep, as Elizabeth was saying, like being able to have an app to focus on sleep. And I think before, a lot of mental health focus was on specifically just intervention and screening. And now we're looking at stepped care and prevention. That's a byproduct of all the services and products that people are building in digital mental health.
So, as we're talking about digital mental health, and when we step back and we think about the therapist-client relationship, I think it's pretty well established that we know that that initial rapport, the fit and connection between the client and the therapist is really important in terms of just overall outcomes in therapy. What are some key challenges that clinicians might be facing if they're trying to establish that connection in a digital health environment?
I think some of the research that we've done at Alma recently, looking at about 7,000 outpatient therapy clients, and what we found that is about 40% of them have broken up with their therapist because they didn't experience a good fit. And that from the client perspective, fit is often very much related to identity, shared identities, shared experiences, and perspectives. And so, within the virtual space, I think we have really exciting opportunities to provide more, I think, as we said, precise matches, but also more opportunities for clients to connect with a provider who really kind of meets their specifications and who they identify with in ways that are going to be very important in terms of supporting therapeutic alliance. The only other thing I would add is that when it comes to tools that are outside the realm of kind of traditional talk therapy or telehealth, if it's relatively easy to break up with a human therapist, imagine how easy it is to break up with an app on the phone, right? And so that we really need to be thinking about how we are matching clients with tools. And I think this is a huge piece of the work that Sam is doing at Reliant, because finding that sense of fit, whether it is with a human being or through the interaction with a tool that you're using on your phone or elsewhere, is going to be critical, and potentially even more critical when we're talking about prevention or intervention delivered via a non-human kind of modality.
At Woebot, we published a paper a few years ago showing that Woebot, in the course of 3 days, was able to establish kind of near human levels of bond with a user of the product. So I think it's, I think, and this has been shown in other companies as well that use similar kind of chat or relation agent approaches to care. And I think one of the interesting things we've been grappling with is, in the context of traditional treatment where you're a therapist and a client, you're building rapport and bond. There's almost a capital that you can use at moments when maybe people are unwilling or on the fence about whether to try something. You can kind of give them a little like nudge and lean into the trust of that relationship to help people try things. And I see a lot of opportunity. And it's one of the things that we're thinking about. It's like if we're able to build this relationship, how can we use it and really try to serve the user's best interest to kind of help them take those chances and apply things and really do that kind of bridging of in-app support to real world application. I think there's a lot of exciting opportunities when I think about that, but also the ability for clinical integration and how can you leverage the fact that your client has a strong relationship with a digital tool and how might that add additional dimension or support for the in-person work you're doing to support that person. So I think it's very much early days, but I think as the science matures and as we think about this and can understand how these right now parallel tracks can become more merge, I think there's real opportunities on the road ahead.
One of the things we've tried to do is integrate the recommendation of digital technologies into the primary care relationship. So we have a very large primary care integrated behavioral health program, and we leverage that relationship to try and build trust. But even then, I would say, 45% of the time that we offer a digital tool for a patient, they're declining and saying, no, I know I need a human. And so there's also there's an educational component to this. Again, as Tim said, we're early days, right? So the health literacy and the understanding around the promise of technologies is still, very nascent. And so, we're publishing as much as we possibly can, like Woebot, on, folks' experience with these tools, because they really are showing a great deal of promise when you connect the right person with them in the right way. But that's one of the challenges we really run into is there are a lot of patients who think, no, what I need is a therapist, and anything else is second best. And sometimes that's going to be true. And a part of our job in the research world is figuring out for whom is that true? For whom is it that they really need a human connection, and for whom is it that they can actually, take full advantage of a technology?
One of the in thinking of care delivery, one of the most disruptive things we see in care is the tech itself, or at times would be the digital literacy of providers and patients, right? And that's not to sit there and blame them by any means. The systems have to be set up in a way that it's built for them and that they're educated on it, because none of us went to school for troubleshooting a poor video stream, right? Or making adjustments, but to work effectively in a virtual care setting, you need to know how to troubleshoot a little bit. You need to be able to talk to the fact that digital care is different. It feels different. Eye contact looks different. There's more distractions in your environment. And what we really try to recommend is providers talk about how strange this is in some way and keep checking in on it. And how is this going for you? Let me know if something in your environment distracts you, and I'll do the same, because we know we're in a we're in the comfort of our own home, and there's pros and cons to that, of course. But I see a lot of, and this is across many settings. So patient complaints around like professionalism, technology, and other things that they um, will interpret as a real negative experience, and they won't come back, right? Or we'll have to like really fight to earn their trust and say, hey, this is a place where we really think you can get better. So. And it's not just the technology of the platforms, I want to say. It's sometimes our patients' internet connections. There's so many different reasons why things can get disrupted.
I would agree with Kevin that the literacy for providers is very important. One of the things that I've said often is we have to really reimagine what it's like to be clinicians. We've been doing it for the same way for so long. And so I think that is a challenge, especially for therapists in the working with clients, is when they're not feeling confident about the technology. That shows up in the session when they're not sure, how to troubleshoot, or they're not sure what to recommend as far as an app or digital therapeutic, or even leveraging AI or VR. They're saying, I'm not sure how this fits, and I'm not sure what my role is in this. And I think that then affects the relationship. When you're talking to a client, you're saying, I want to introduce this into the work we're doing, but you're not completely sure how it works. they're going to be hesitant too because they're looking to you and they trust you. And I think that really impacts it. And so I think as we think about how to maybe address that, it really is helping therapists to reframe what their role is. It's kind of like a surgeon. You know, you see the stories about surgeons using robots. They are still the ones actually performing the surgery, but the new skill is they've had to learn how to direct the robot to do it. And so I think that's what we need to do as therapists. And there's this currently, you know, a lot of the issue is people are saying we're taking the human element out. And for me, it's more so reframing how do you train or how do you use technology to do what you were doing so that you can do more, be more effective, and be more have better efficacy. And I think that we really need to switch to that narrative, and that will really, I think, help with the client therapist relationship when using technology.
If I may, I think that's a really important point. We studied before and after when we pivoted to virtual therapy and virtual prescribing. We studied our clinicians' attitudes around how they thought they would be able to form a clinical alliance and therapeutic alliance. And it was very, very interesting. The perceptions beforehand were, very concerned, really worried that it would be second best. And then afterward, really interesting. The bulk of what we got back was, I can form a therapeutic alliance every bit as well, using this new, format. And I get to see inside the home. And I had never thought about how valuable that would be. But that's actually also tremendously helpful as I'm thinking about what's going on for patients and how to help them.
And I think it calls into question. I think there's a continuing education component of this for folks that have already completed their training. But I think the real opportunity is how are we future-proofing the training of kind of the next generation of folks that are going to be doing this, and how do we bring that forward as much as possible? And how are we teaching people that maybe this hasn't been something they've needed to do, and thus it hasn't matriculated into the curriculum of students that are being trained. And I think that's where the real opportunity is, because I think those are the folks that are going to be able to help shape and kind of practice or grow their practice with the growing of this technology, and are in best position to help with the integration challenges that we're going to have to navigate ahead.
I think that's a great point, Tim, and a great segue into thinking about the future of digital mental health. I'd love to, at this point, also invite the audience. If you have any questions for our panelists, feel free to send them in, and we will address as many as we can towards the end of our time today. So thinking about the future and where we're going with digital mental health, how do each of you see the field continuing to evolve in the next few years?
It's going to be so fast, particularly with AI. If you think that patients aren't already getting therapy from AI, think again. And we're going to see more and more consumer-facing technologies. We're also going to see a lot of clinician-facing co-pilot style technologies to try and address technology, to try and address clinical effectiveness, clinical quality. We're already seeing technologies like Listen, for example, that can listen in while you're doing a session and grade you on adherence to a particular therapeutic milieu. And so I think we're going to continue to see changes in tools assisting clinicians, but even more rapid, we're going to see more change in the patient-facing, the consumer-facing technologies that are out there. And I think particularly things that are more or more standardized, like cognitive behavioral therapy, particularly sort of discrete physiological interventions. We're going to see those things become commoditized in the next three to 5 years. You're going to see superb technologies for training people in diaphragmatic breathing, progressive deep muscle relaxation, all that stuff.
I would add that I think we can all hope that we will see the emergence of a more integrated ecosystem where these tools are really kind of working in tandem at different levels of care and to address different needs, whether preventive or interventional. So for instance, talking about, on-ramps to therapy, how can people use these tools and if needed, be directed into an appropriate higher level of care, or when their needs have been met or they are experiencing stable improvement, what kind of off-ramps can we provide them through these tools that might allow them to maintain the gains they've made through more traditional treatment. But all of that really requires a level of communication that exists within the system between these various players, including technology companies and primary care and the more traditional behavioral health system at various levels of care. It's going to require a level of communication and integration that I don't think we have seen historically. And there's a lot of work to be done in that space in order to really kind of create seamless care experiences for patients.
Since I started working in digital mental health and building digital therapeutics, I think the kind of a common refrain I've heard is like, are you trying to replace me? You're trying to take my job. And I think only through exposure and actually using this do people quickly realize this is not going to take my job. And I think where I see the opportunity in the future is just a reorientation to what is a perceived threat to being a perceived opportunity. How can you embrace this and think about it not as something that's going to replace your job, because it's not, but how can it help you do your job better? How can this be another tool that you have? And I think it goes to the points that were raised earlier of just the more facile, the more you understand, the more confident you are at the new tools that are becoming available. I do see the opportunity for that to just, help with the challenges that folks are facing. And I think that's the real opportunity that it's available. But I think it means just kind of looking at what has been a threat for so long or perceived to be a threat for so long, just in a different light and just trying to see if that helps, the approach to the problem.
Yeah, I just wanted to plus one that because, I think the changes we'll see, of course, will be AI and a lot of data and things like that. But, to your point, we think about AI like an Iron Man suit, something to kind of really enhance the tools of a provider and the resources available for patients so they get the right thing at the right time. Something I think a lot about in quality is like the right intervention at the right time for the right person. And where I think we're going in general is just I think Elizabeth, you tapped onto that, but this more like personalized care. We're able to kind of inject data and AI and just really learn, do research, and create like individual pathways for clients, standardized care, but adjusted to like an individual nuance of a patient. And again, just that better timing. And to Jessica's point, the timing is not just intervention, but it's like prevention, early intervention, and then late intervention. So
I absolutely agree with Elizabeth about I think we will see more integration in holistic health because technology will enable that, thinking about different API systems and how they can connect, with your primary care and then a behavioral health system. I also think, kind of building off of what Tim and Kevin were saying, that we are going to see an evolution of closer collaboration with clinicians. One of the things about digital mental health in general right now is not incredibly regulated. There's a lot of gray area. And I think that as more regulatory and compliance structures get implemented, people will need to consult with clinicians from the beginning when they're thinking about a project. I mean, I think that's important. People are building really cool things right now, but some of it are not things that clinicians need or will use. And unfortunately, that almost becomes a waste, right? And I think people are starting to realize that you can build amazing things, but if you don't get the people on board to use it, it doesn't go anywhere. And so I think that we're going to see an evolution of more collaboration with clinicians of how do we build this so you can use it. You think about like Epic. Anybody who's ever used Epic will complain that it does not work for their department, for their clinical needs, for whatever it is. And more, you're starting to see other people saying, let's replace that, let's customize that, because they started working with clinicians, right? They're saying, what do you need? I think we will see that across digital mental health tools. And I will add my hope. One of the things I hope that I am not seeing, but I hope for the evolution, is thinking about more ways that we can have evidence-informed interventions that are inclusive of everyone. I think this is an excellent opportunity for mental health to be building things that think about people's lived experience, there's social identities, all of that together as we're building it, which is not traditional mental health. It's one of the things we don't talk about a lot, but a lot of the things were not built. The theories, interventions were not created with everyone in mind. And we have an opportunity to do that because we are building technology. And so that is something that I hope that we evolve more into, is looking at how is this evidence informed for multiple communities so that people will feel more included in 20 and 30 years from now. We're not having to rebuild and modify and adapt things that we're building now.
I love that point, Jessica, and it really brings me back to thinking about, digital mental health can be beneficial for everybody. And to your point, we can work on building that now. We can work on training clinicians now to improve mental health for everyone by using and leveraging these tools. We do have a question from our audience. So this question is from Heather. Heather said she really appreciates the mention of focus on improving matching between therapists and patients. How are digital mental health companies thinking about this now? And what are some innovative ideas and hot takes about how to improve matching?
I'll start us off. A lot of it is about what kind of data you're collecting. In order to match, you need to have the right data in order to match on. And so we're working on, we right now deploy a computer adaptive questionnaire with 20 different subscales on it that gives us a lot of very precise information about the challenges and the strengths that a patient may be currently, experiencing. Where we're lacking, data is more on the demographic side. How does somebody self-identify? What are the key components of that identity that we really need to make sure we're matching? But I think it was Kevin, and I'm sure Kevin and Elizabeth are both going to have important stuff to say. One of the things that going virtual allows you to do is it allows you to negate geography and scale up the pool of clinicians that you have to match to, so that if we're collecting the right data, we should be able to match much more precisely. But we have to be getting the right data first in order to be able to do it well.
I'll add quickly to that. Yeah, I totally agree. And we collect a lot of information. Well, whatever the patient wants to volunteer for their preferences, and then we know our providers very well. And there's a whole bunch of math and formulas that I don't get privy to or wanted to get privy to, but we're always trying to really refine our matching algorithm. It's a constant iteration of like, how do we, learn from our retention rates, learn from patient experience on their matching. But also, I think we're learning a lot. It's not just the matching part. It's about like, who are we surfacing to our patients, right? When they search, they get a whole slew of providers. So what information do they need to know to make the best decision that they can, right? And this is like, products like TakeOne, where at least you see a video, you get to like interact or see a provider, or you can see their practice style. But we've seen, depending on how a provider fills out their profile, their selection rates may vary. So, as platforms, we're always helping providers optimize, so we can, there can be a better fit between those who are matching to them.
I would add that I think it's somewhat more straightforward when we're talking about collecting data about clients. It can be much more challenging to engage clinicians in being open to collecting data about the clinician's efficacy, where their real strengths are and where their areas of weakness are. And I think there's a parallel kind of process here around movement towards feedback-informed treatment, where clinicians are engaged in this kind of continuous improvement process. And I think what could come hand in hand with that is more detailed, kind of nuanced information about clinician profiles, strengths, and really areas of proficiency that we will only be able to get there with buy-in from clinicians who recognize that this kind of continuous improvement and collection of data will actually make them more effective in their jobs, because it will allow us to place clients with the clinicians who are best suited to meet their needs.
You did ask for hot takes as well. So I guess I'll come I think it's more of a warm take, which is that I think kind of inherent in the question is the assumption that the only match can be between a client and a therapist. And I think part of what we're talking about here is maybe given an understanding of the client's needs, are there digital tools that might be more appropriate as a first step here? And maybe it can be, given the progress made there, is it enough where it doesn't necessitate the step up to human care? So I think there's opportunities as we continue to work together and build this ecosystem to think about finding the right tool, whether that be a human level of support or other kind of support to meet someone where they're at and decrease that time to them feeling better.
Well, thanks everyone. I've really enjoyed learning from each of our esteemed panelists today. And I hope those of you in the audience have some thoughts to take away as you're thinking about the future of digital mental health, or maybe even how you are going to integrate digital mental health into your work as a clinician. Thank you so much to SDMH and TakeOne for sponsoring this event today. And really, really glad we got a chance to have the discussion. I hope everyone has a great day, and appreciate that everyone taking the time to be here with us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.